I'm the mother of a Commonwealth student who graduated in 2010. And I was really happy when, during his first semester of college, he called me. He was in New York City, and he called me and said, "I'm in Queens, and I'm going to the cemetery where your grandparents are buried." I was only in that cemetery once many years ago, so I didn't even really know exactly where it was, but I was glad he was going. And while he was talking to me, he said, the neighborhood must have really changed because I'm going to this Jewish cemetery, and since I got off the subway and started walking, I haven't seen a single white person in this neighborhood. And while we were talking, suddenly I heard this kind of thump and yelling and some running, and then his phone went dead, and I realized I just heard my son being mugged while I was talking to him on the phone. And I tried calling him back, got no answer. Tried calling the New York City police, but I didn't really know where he was. I tried calling, I did know the name of the cemetery. I called the office, but they were about to close. They hadn't seen him. So I spent a very anxious hour and a half imagining terrible things that might have happened to him. And then he called me and said, "I'm fine." A guy who I think was about 14 grabbed my phone, and as a former member of the Commonwealth running team, he chased him. He said, for about a mile, but without success. And now he was borrowing the phone of a guy who was near the bus stop that he was going to take back to Manhattan. So when he got back to his dorm room, he called me about 2 hours later, and he said, "Hey, you know what? I can use Find My Phone on my computer to see the building where my phone is. So I think what I'm going to do is go back to that neighborhood and talk to that kid about why he took my phone and offer to buy it from him." And I said, I don't think that's a good idea. And he said, "How are we going to end racism and classism unless we stop responding in stereotypical ways to these kind of events?" And he was really insistent he was going to do this, and I got him to a promise that he would wait a day or two so we could talk about it further. So the next day, my phone rings, and I look at it, and I see it says Queens, New York on it, and I answer it, and this man on the other end says, "Oh, I must have the wrong number." And I said, "Actually, I think you might be the man who loaned my son your phone so he could call me and tell me he was okay after I heard him getting mugged." And he said, "Oh, the kid from Boston." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I went to Boston College. I really hated Boston. It's a really racist city." And he said, I had to leave because I couldn't stand it. And I said, "I'm really sorry those things happened to you." And we talked some more, and then I told him about Russell's plan to go back to the neighborhood and find the kid and try to start a dialogue with him. And this guy said, "That's not a good idea. Your son doesn't belong in this neighborhood. Tell him not to come back." So I told Russell this, and he said that he had also talked to one of his classmates at City College who also lived in that neighborhood, and she said to him, "Russell, the next time you want to visit your grandparents' graves, you let me know and I'll give you a ride because you really shouldn't be walking around in my neighborhood." And so I don't know the answer to Russell's question about how do we end racism and classism, but I think that it's a white kid trying to start a dialogue with somebody who takes his phone, and a black man who loans his phone to a white kid who doesn't belong in his neighborhood is the beginning.